Hey guys, welcome back to another Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter card game review. Today's game we put on the tabletop is a game by Studio Woe called Gruff. Gruff is a 2 or 4 player game in which players are going to select gruffs or goats that look something like this right here, and they're going to select abilities from each of the gruff's decks, and each gruff has their own individual deck. Put all those cards together, shuffle them up, and make a deck of their own, put the gruffs in front of them, and fight against another player's deck. Now, like I said, it's 2 to 4 players. It's about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and it's ages 11 and up. And you go back and forth fighting gruffs. Now your gruffs can die, they can be regenerated, and the objective is going to be to kill your opponent's shepherd. And every player has a shepherd, and they have a certain amount of life force. Each gruff also has additional different abilities, as well as different stats, like weird, and over here it's mean and fat, and they all have different stats. The fat is going to equal their health, the mean is their damage, and the weird is going to have the ability for shepherds to be able to play spell cards. And that's the basic idea of the game. Back and forth combat, as well as actions, and then attacking and trying to defeat your opponent's shepherd. Alright, let me go ahead and show you the game. Alright guys, so as you can see here, there are a bunch of different gruffs to choose from, and this is just a small selection of what you have, especially when you have all the different expansions included in the game. We have a Thump, a Squat, a Nigon 963, a Pustule, a Grinder, and a Gusto here, as well as some other ones. And the idea is you're going to be selecting gruffs back and forth, and each of you is going to get 3 different gruffs. Now, as I said before, there's a mean value, a weird, and a fat value, as well as an ability, right? And it says on most of the gruffs, when they're activated, they do something. This one says it gets +2 weird and a mean when it's activated. Each of these gruffs is also going to come with little pieces that attach to the cards, which I'll show you later, to signify their increase of stats based on when those stats increase. After you've gone ahead and selected 3 different gruffs, then you're going to go ahead and put them on the board and select their decks. Alright, so over here we have the gruffs as they are appearing on the board, as well as their apparent decks that are next to each other. Now, each player is going to select 8 cards from the respective decks of each gruff. Go ahead and grab this. We'll pick Grover here. And there's a whole bunch of cards here, right? So you would select 8 cards however you'd like. Now, of course, there are, in the game itself, specific cards that you should choose. They have little stars on them that are easier to understand, as well as some cards that are a little more confusing. This one doesn't have any of them, I believe. But oh, here it is, right here. This 9 has a little symbol up here. That's more a complex card. You can only have 1 per deck per gruff. So if you want to select those. But yeah, you'll go ahead and select 8 of them. Here's 4. Here's another 4. And you would do that. And then you would select another 8 over here. And then you would select another 8 over here in any fashion that you would like. And you would make your deck. After you've got your deck, you go ahead and take all the cards, shuffle them all up like this, and place it down over here on your stack. The rest of the cards will go away. Now, you've got that all set up, and your opponent has that as well. You will then go ahead and select a shepherd. Okay, so here we have a selection of shepherds. Now, of course, like I said before, if you have an expansion, there's tons more cards to choose from. And up here on the top right-hand side is the Limit Breaker cards icon for each and every single shepherd. If they have a certain number, that's how many of those type of cards you can have in your deck. So, for instance, this deck here will allow you to have 4 different symbols here, and that would give you 1 of these, and you could also have 3 more of these cards putting into your full deck of cards. Each shepherd is also going to have their own unique ability here. This one says whenever a gruff is killed, you draw a card, and this one over here says whenever this character's life drops below his threshold, which is this little line here, and all these guys do have different thresholds. Some of them don't, some of them do. The opposing players each discard 2 cards at random. Ooh, that's pretty strong. You'll also notice there's a life tracker over here. If at any point any of your shepherd's life goes to 0, you lose, as well as your crazy value that goes over here. Crazy value is pretty simple. It basically means that you're going to go up in increasing in weird throughout your turns, and that will increase your crazy value from your gruffs, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But as you increase your crazy value, that's how many different types of cards you can play from your hand. And each of the cards here has a cost of crazy. So that's 3, and that's 2, and that's 3, and 21. So some of them have more than others, obviously. But you can play as many cards as you can play based on the crazy value that you have to spend. And it always refreshes at the end of every turn. Okay, so to start your turn playing Gruff, it's fairly simple, but there's a little complex thing you do to the beginning, and that is attack. It's the cleanup step in which you have to actually, whatever monster you activated the turn before, you have to attack with that monster. And it'll be based on your monster's attack, plus any bonus attack add-ons you can do with cards, as well as your opponent's fat versus its defense, if any defense were added to cards. After you do that, you get rid of all the conditions on the board, as well as if all of your monsters had been turned sideways, that means they're exhausted, you refresh them and you can use them once again. After that, you go ahead and draw a card from the deck. Then you activate a Gruff. Now you can choose to activate any Gruff that has not been turned over sideways, and then after you do that, you can do all of its abilities. So this one will say it gets +2 weird when it's activated, and other things like that, right? Then you can play your cards, like I said, and you play up to your crazy value, and after that you do a tactical move. A tactical move could be something like attack, which is your exhausted Gruff can then choose to attack the adjacent Gruff on the opposite side, on your opponent's side, or it could choose to move, so it can move from one Gruff space to another, like switching basically, which I'll explain later, as well as growing, which it can just increase one of its stat values, any of the stat values like a fat, weird, or the mean, as well as resurrect. So if your Gruff is dead, you bring it back into play with all of the same remaining stats it had before it died. Alright, let me go ahead and show you a turn of play and how it kind of works. Alright guys, so here we have the game set up for the first player right here. As you can see, the game comes with these little pins here that kind of designate where the stats go on the characters. For the Shepherd, the life value and the crazy value. And you have the blacks, which represent 1, and then the red ones here that represent increments of 10. As well as the mean and the weird and the fat for these guys, right? So that's set up like this, and on the opponent's side, it's just the same way, set up exactly the same way with a different Shepherd, as well as 3 different Gruffs, and your deck on the right-hand side. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into how to take a turn. Now the first thing is the cleanup phase, and you can look at this card right here, it tells you a nice little order, it's how to clean up the game. First is resolve your attacks, if you have any, which there isn't on the first turn, as well as conditions, which get removed from cards, and if your Gruffs are all exhausted, which is kind of like this, then they all kind of refresh. And you can only use actions or activates when a Gruff is not exhausted. Next thing you do is draw a card. Now, as you know, or as you don't know, I should say, everybody gets 5 cards to start the game with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And put it sideways on the side. Okay, and you get to draw your card. After that, you will play cards. Oh, sorry. After that, you will activate a Gruff. Activating a Gruff is fairly simple. Choose one of the Gruffs that you want. I'll choose this big grip jaw right here. +1 mean and +1 fat when activated. So his mean goes from 0 to 1, and his fat goes from 1 to 2. Fat is defense, mean is offense. After that, you add the weird value, whatever it might be, to your Shepherd here, which unfortunately for this Gruff has no weird, so his weird value wouldn't go up. If it were Grover over here, he has 1. If you have activated him, his damage is equal to the weird score he has, so kind of makes him a all-in-one monster. But you would increase based on that 1 as opposed to the 0 here. Now, after you go ahead and activate, so your Gruff is now turned sideways, then you're going to play cards. Now, unfortunately, the cards in your hand, you have 8, 4, 3, 7, 2, and 5 over here, so he can't play any of those because he doesn't have any weird. But after that, he goes ahead and he does a tactical action. There's 4 different tactical actions. You can move, it's simply moving your Gruffs from one side to the other. Or you could choose to attack, which is simply pushing your Gruff up to attack. Or you can choose to grow, which is simply moving one of these means over here up, or when the weirds or fat, just go up 1 point. And finally, you can resurrect. If your Gruff had died the turn before or any other turn previously, you could flip it back over and it's good to go again. Now he's going to go ahead and choose to attack. So he moves his Gruff up and he's chosen to attack. So he's got his 1 mean right there. All right, now back to the opponent here. The character has just his other opponent has actually just done his attack. Now he gets to go ahead and do the same actions, right? Clean up. There's nothing to clean up. He has no attacks to resolve. So he goes ahead and removes any conditions. Still no conditions. And all the Gruffs that are exhausted, you flip them over. Or unturn them, right? Draw a card. So he'll draw one of his cards. He'll activate a Gruff. So he has to realize that he's got 1 fat here, and this Gruff over here is doing 1 damage. So as long as they're tied, it's okay. And you can't play cards as instants, you have to play them on your turn, so you'll know if you can handle dealing with a Gruff or not. So in this instance, he doesn't need to do anything with his character, because this Gruff isn't going to be able to do damage to him. But he will decide to pick another one. He'll go ahead and do Tooth. Tooth, when it activates, it gives him +1 fat. Gives him another defense. This guy's got a lot of defense here. And activates his weird, so he'll move up on the weird tracker to 3. Alright. And after that, he'll go ahead and play any cards if he can for 3. 12, 9. Here's 1 min-max. Choose any Gruff, it loses 1 point from any stat. Then it gets +1 from any stat. So we'll go ahead and play that card. It'll cost him 1 crazy. Now the crazy doesn't go away, it just means he has 2 left for the rest of the turn. And he will go ahead and get rid of maybe 1 weird and increase his fat value to 5. Done. Played the card. and do tactical action. So he's now going to do his tactical action, and he can choose to do the attacks or whatever. He thinks he will go up with Skulldozer on his mean value. And then back to the other player. Now we go ahead and resolve the attacks with Gripjaw over here. And we move Skulldozer up so you can see the attacks going on, like here, I'll just show you. His mean goes to the fat, and if it's tied, nothing happens. If his mean was higher than the opponent's Gruff's fat, it would kill the Scruff and flip it over sideways, as well as attack the opponent's Prophet over here. Now, when the Prophet has been taken damage, he will simply lose life equal to the damage. So if he actually had taken 1 damage, he would go down. And it says whenever one of your attacks is fully blocked, Brat gains a crazy, so nothing happens here. But some Prophets do have abilities that have thresholds, and if this little bar here goes down past that threshold, an ability will activate. So it's kind of like a trample damage sort of thing, right? Now, because nothing happened, it would simply resolve. And this Gruff over here, this one right here, would simply do nada. It would just sit there, and you can only activate these next 2 Gruffs. And turns will go back and forth that way. I also want to talk a little bit about all these Gruff cards that you can get, because there's some really interesting ones. And you have Mutations, you have Conditions, and you have the little checkmark cards that basically are play instantly, or play and discard. So like Bad Science here for 9, shuffle your discard pile into your deck and draw a card. A really good card, especially since if your deck runs out, you're kind of screwed. This is a Catalyst. This is a condition that goes away at the beginning of your next turn. So it says, while this card is in play, your other cards cost 2 less crazy to play. That's pretty good, actually. And finally, you have Mutations, which last until they're destroyed, and there's a bunch of cards that can destroy mutations. This one says, Gruffs on your team with mean scores add their maximum dealt damage to +2. Oh, wow, that's really good. But there's tons of really cool cards in here, and they do a ton of different things. Mutate Grover. When you play this mutation, draw a card. You have no maximum hand size as long as this card's in play. Let's see another one really quick here. When this card is in play, other cards cost you crazy. Yeah, basically a lot of the same style of cards as you choose which Gruff you want. So if you want high damage dealing cards, you pick the Gruffs with high damage dealing, high weird, and so on and so forth. Also, we'll talk a little bit about these Shepherds really quick. Baba Haga is if Baba's life crosses her threshold, which is this little line here. There's lines on the card that show the threshold, which is go from 4 to 3. Play a Fester mutation token on all enemy Gruffs. As well as Coalfield, when it drops below its threshold, opposing players each discard 2 cards at random. And it also says threshold, right? So if it goes below threshold, it activates the ability. Some say it only activates once, but this one here, if you gain the health back and lose it again, it happens again. Capri is whenever a Gruff is killed, he gets to draw a card. That's really nice, but he doesn't have a threshold. And all the different characters have different health points and values. Okay, so that's the idea of how you play Gruff, a very simple yet very, very complex game at the same time. I know it's kind of confusing, but the idea is you have a lot of simple actions that you can take, but it's which actions are going to be the most relevant on your turn, and there's a lot of different choices there. Now, like I said before, once your Shepherd dies, you're done with, as well as if all 3 of your Gruffs die at once, or not at once, but if all 3 of your Gruffs die without resurrecting them, you also lose. And if no Gruff is on your side of the field, like it's dead, and your opponent attacks again on that area, it goes straight through and hits your Shepherd, so you always have to be protecting your Shepherd. If your deck runs out, your deck of spell cards or Gruff cards, you can keep playing, it's just you kind of SOL, you've lost the ability to draw additional cards. And if your crazy value goes up, you can keep gaining points. I know it shows like 30 here, but I think you can just keep on going. Also, I'll talk a little bit about the expansions. There is an expansion that involves Goldfisk, which is a troll, and you can play up to 4 players. And if any of the Shepherds die, you lose. And the idea is you're trying to basically fight him. And it's kind of an interesting little variant to play, and it includes in one of the expansions. Really fun if you enjoy a little bit of a cooperative and an actual competitive game. As well as another expansion includes a bunch of Shepherds and a bunch of Gruffs. There's just tons of great stuff here. And I think the more you get, the more variety you're going to have. But that's the idea of how you play Gruff. A simple, like, putting together different decks. It's like a deck builder almost. But then it's actually also a, like, 1v1 combat style fighting game. Anyway, let me go ahead and tell you what I think about it. Alright guys, so that is Gruff by Studio Woe. Now, like I said before, I got a bunch of the expansion stuff, and I think there's some stuff coming out for Kickstarter too. I'll put all these stuff in the description below. But it includes stuff like this little miniature guy here. As well as in the box, it also includes a bunch of dividers and stuff like that, so it's almost like a deck builder that has all the different dividers for all the different Gruffs and Shepherds. As well as the cool aspect of fighting a boss, so it makes it not just a two-player game, but also fighting bosses and stuff. Really, really unique. Really interesting concepts. You have these little tracker markers over here that indicate the health and all the different stat values, and they're really nice and they work really well for these cards. This was a great idea that I haven't seen done before to my knowledge. I also love the art in this game. The art is fun. I really like looking at all the different types of Gruffs and choosing them. When I first picked the game, I just chose the coolest ones I could find. And I like the different cards and how you can kind of synergize your Gruffs. Where one Gruff by himself might not be beneficial to you, all three of them put together can give you a wide variety of things. You also have the option to choose a hard-on attacker team or a far-on defense team, and use your cards to kill your opponent. So it has all that deck-building joy in it, while also you don't know your opponent's building, so you have a lot of variety. Even the base game all by itself with the Gruffs it includes is still fun and still enjoyable, but with all this extra content, it makes this game infinitely replayable. I am very, very excited to give a huge glowing recommendation for this game. I enjoyed the flow, I enjoyed the synergy, I enjoyed the back and forth combat. I also like the fact that yes, it does trample damage and your character starts losing health pretty quickly, especially if you're not careful. But my first game, I was at 1 health for 3/4 of the game and still almost won, even though my opponent was at high health, because I didn't really grasp the whole trample damage thing. But once I did, the flow started getting there and everything just played out really, really well. And I love the synergy with the Gruffs as well. You kind of have to work against your opponent while deciding what he's going to be playing, and you're learning how his deck works throughout the game. So a wonderful, wonderful game. They did a great job, and I'm very happy to support the game Gruff with my stamp of approval. Alright guys, thanks for watching another Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter card game review. If you like this game and you're interested in checking out Gruff by Studio Woe, go ahead and check out the links below. Should have a bunch of cool content there for you to go and purchase. I would definitely recommend it. A lot of fun. Also, if you didn't know, we got new t-shirts, Unfiltered Gamer, and on the back it says, see you next time. I was going to do the whole spin thing originally, at the very end, but I thought that's kind of lame. In fact, what I just did was kind of lame. Anyway, also go ahead and check out our website, unfilteredgamer.com. If you like this content, we've got blog posts, Kickstarter lists, and even more, as well as checking out the rest of our videos here on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and comment. We've also got a bunch of different affiliated websites, people that help us out and spread the word about our content. Go ahead and check out Devatos Gaming, as well as the Giveaway Geek, and everythingboardgames.com. A little guy flying around somewhere. I don't know where he is. Alright guys, thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you next time.